Okay, so last week we spoke about the first half of the last half of the verse. This week we're going to speak about the last half of the last half of the verse. Does that make sense? So as a reminder, we talked about last week I should say what verse we're reading is, He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. That's 23:3b, and we're doing the last half of that. But as a reminder, it is important to remember that He leads us. We need Him to lead us, just like the sheep, because we tend to stay on the same path, just like sheep will. They dig a rut. They just keep walking, or they lay in the same spots in the ground and make hollows and get into trouble. They need to move along and get out of their ruts they get into. We get into the same thing. And the other thing they do is that they'll sit there, and if they'll stay in that, because they like the pasture where they're at, they'll just keep eating and eating. They eat clear down to the roots and destroy the pasture. So then they don't have grass growing anymore. So they've killed their own food supply. So they really need a shepherd to lead them, to keep them moving, to keep rotating pastures, get new grass, new places to go. And we do the same thing. Sometimes we stay someplace too long. Sometimes it's time to move on. Whether it's a ministry job, whether it's your job, maybe it's you need to move on from your husband. No. Not really, but anyway. Anyway, just my bad joke made you wake up, right? But yeah, sometimes it's time to move on, and we need to move on, and we need new pastures, new things. We need to learn new things, do new things. Jesus keeps us moving because it's good for us. It's good to grow. You grow when you move and move on to new places, and you get a new food supply. So we need Jesus as shepherd, the good shepherd leading us to where we need to go. The other reason we need to be led is because just like the sheep, we get lost. We get off track. We get out of focus. And we need to keep our eyes on Jesus, just like the sheep need to keep their eye on the shepherd to stay on the path they're supposed to be on in life. We can wander off and get off track and not be where we're supposed to be. So we need to keep looking ahead, looking at where the shepherd's at. That's what will get us to where we need to go. So that's what we talked about last week. So this week we're going to talk a little more specifically about how He leads us and what the end results are for Him leading us. So we're going to do that. It may be a little quicker lesson tonight because this was like part 2. It was like one lesson cut in half. So because it was just too much for one lesson. So we'll see how it goes. So Jesus, our good shepherd, leads us on particular paths or right paths meant for us. There's someplace we're supposed to be, someplace we're supposed to be going and walking on. The right paths imply to us a dual meaning. The first meaning is the day-to-day, moment-to-moment directions, instructions, guidance we need from the little things to the big things in life. We need Him to put us on the right path, that particular path where we're supposed to be. So that's where we start. We learn to listen to His instructions, whether it's learning where I'm supposed to go, what's my job supposed to be, am I supposed to go buy that thing today, anything, little instructions to big instructions. That's what He's supposed to get us on the right path in life. Sometimes people think they shouldn't ask about the silly things, the little things in life, but He's involved in every area of our life, and that's still part of the right path. What does He want you to spend your money on? Because that's all part of life, and He wants you doing the right things. Because like say you spent your money on something frivolous that maybe you weren't supposed to spend your money on, then the thing that's coming up that you need the money for, you don't have it for. But if you'd asked God first, He might have said, don't go buy that, wait, maybe He'd give it to you later. Who knows? But you've got to pay attention to what He's telling you, so it keeps you out of trouble, it keeps you on the right path. There's a variety of terms in the Bible where we read verses that talk about how He guides us or leads us. And so you can look up these verses later to see how they're written. But in Psalm 139:16, which we studied a few months ago, the days are fashioned for us. He has things planned out for us. Our whole life is planned. And in Proverbs 3:5-6, many of you know, He directs our steps. That's another way it's worded in the Bible. And then in Psalm 48 and 73 and Isaiah 58:11, he says he guides us. And in Psalm 32:8, he instructs us, he teaches us, he guides us. And Isaiah 48:17, he leads us. And then Psalm 37:23, our steps are ordered. So he's got it all planned out for us. And you'll see these different passages. This is just a few of them where he's guiding people, instructing them, and leading them. He's got something planned for you. I don't think I can emphasize it enough. We think we can just go through life. I got to go to my job today. I need to go do my shopping today. But he actually has things planned out for us, what he wants us to do. And that's why you're supposed to start the day out in prayer, talking about it, and talk to him all throughout the day about what's going on, what he has for you to do, who he has you to talk to, what he needs you to do. So these paths represent those decisions and directions that will fulfill God's preordained will for us. So if you're not listening, you're not asking, you're probably not staying in his will. And that's what we need to do. So if you'll notice that they are righteous paths, that verse calls them righteous paths or right paths, righteous paths. They represent a walk that is pleasing to God. So what you're doing in life, no matter what it is, from the mundane to the special, whatever you're doing is supposed to be pleasing to God. That's what a righteous path is. So this is the second meaning of the right paths that we're supposed to be on. It's not just the details, but it's how we're living. Are we living a holy life? Are we living the way he wants us to? So these paths aren't just momentary decisions or directional turns in life. They are behavior patterns. They're the paths we are on normally. It's the way we're supposed to behave, the way we're supposed to act. They correspond to his 10 commandments, let's say, or his word. They match his moral nature. So our path in life should match God's nature. You should be following in his steps, right? You should be like Jesus, right, as they say. And it's a holy life that you're supposed to be living. So we need to follow our good shepherd to understand how to live a holy life. So how does a good shepherd guide us? Marvin Morgan, in his book, he called this the 7 C's of divine guidance in his book. 1, you commit your decisions to the Lord in prayer. Ask him to lead and guide you.
Not bless you, what you to get already started.
Yeah, that's the thing. So many times we do something and then we go, oh, will you bless this thing I'm doing, this ministry, or this job I've got. But no, you start with prayer before you do things. And ask him. Ask him. Don't be afraid to ask him what you need to do. I mean, like I said, it's just, I've used this example before. When we were poor and young, we asked in a silly question, can we go buy a McDonald's ice cream cone? Because our finances were tight. And it was only, I don't remember if it was 15 or 25 cents at that time. Back when they used to be affordable.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are now, $2 now. But anyway, that was a lot of money to us because we were on such a strict budget. I only had $40 for groceries. So to ask to go out and buy an ice cream was like, okay, that's a frivolous, I don't really need ice cream. I do, but Terry did especially. Anyway, even those what seem like silly little things, if you ask him and he gives you permission, you're staying in his will, even on stuff like that.
And sometimes in your memory, sometimes those were the most contented times in your life when you didn't have, you didn't think you had so much control.
Right. You couldn't fall back on your own resources necessarily. Yeah.
That's where God wants you not to be
Yeah.
able to, but
Yeah.
I think our human nature doesn't want to be that dependent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he wants us to be dependent on him. That's like the manna. What is the manna? It was every day. They had to go out and get their one allotment. That's it. They weren't supposed to worry about tomorrow. They were supposed to be dependent upon God. And that's the way it is with us. Ask him about stuff. Whatever it may be, whatever your concerns are or needs are. So he leads me on the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So he's leading us. That's the whole point about this. Just a reminder. So number 2, open the covers of the Bible. That's a tough way to say. And see scriptural direction. He will use Bible texts to give us wisdom. He speaks to us through his word. So when I pray almost every morning, I'll say, please illuminate your word to me. Please show me what you want me to learn today, or correct me, or encourage me. Whatever it is you have for me in your word today. Now, he may not have in his Bible, okay, should I take Highway 180 or 141? What do I do? You're not going to find the exact, like take 180. No, he doesn't give you directions that way in the word, but he's going to give you guidelines in there that will guide your day, okay? And he may verbally tell you to take 141 or 180. He might give you directions. But we need to read his word so we know what his guidelines morally are for us, and some basic concepts about how we treat others and how we're supposed to go through the day, right? So I love this verse. This is Isaiah 30:21. Your ears shall hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. Whenever you turn to the right hand or whenever you turn to the left. So he could be right there whispering in your ear saying, hey, don't go over there and see that guy, or hey, you need to go do this right now. That's just so cool to think about him just talking to you, just giving you guidance where you need. It's one of my favorite verses. So number 3, seek the counsel of those who know more about the matter than you do, or who are mature in the faith. Always wisdom with others that you may not realize, that you, either because of their experiences or maybe because of their maturity in the Lord. It's always good to ask some friends, some church people you know, get some advice from other people. So what does the verse say? Proverbs 15:22, without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors they are established. And that's why we have church business meetings, or why we discuss things with the congregation. So we don't just go out and do something we shouldn't. We get an opinion from everybody about what we should do. It's safer that way to discuss things. Back in 1907, there was a financial crisis and the stock market dropped 50%. This wasn't the crash market, what do you call it, the stock market crash in 1929. This was a 1907 event that happened that I didn't realize had happened. So you guys know J.P. Morgan, one of the richest men around, the banking people, rich from way back in history. So this affected him. This crisis got all the bankers upset. They didn't know what to do. And J.P. Morgan was sort of like the top guy. And so all the bankers were he was at his home. And all the bankers were stopping by to find out what they think, what should we do, what do we do about this crisis, And even he did not know what to do, as smart as he was and experienced with the financial world. He didn't know what to do. So he would let the guys come in and they'd meet, one at a time, sit by his fire, and they would talk about the situation. And then they would go and someone asked him, well, what do you think we should do? What do we do? And so he says, well, I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and I will know when the right person comes in with the right idea what we're supposed to do. So he knew even in his position he should be listening to others and getting advice and thinking about it. And it's the same with us. If you're really uncertain about something, go talk to some other Christians you know. Get some advice from them. It's amazing sometimes when you can even just walk into church. I've had times where someone will say something which was exactly what I needed to hear, and maybe I haven't even said anything to them yet. God uses other people in our lives to talk to us about things. And it could be just a simple sentence they've said, and that's what you needed to hear from somebody else. So that's why it's important to have fellowship. That's why it's important to get together for Bible studies or worship. So you have time to be around other people and let God talk to you through them. It's another way of getting counsel from God. He'll use other people to speak to you. So, number 4, see how the circumstances are leading. God often guides us through opening and closing doors. He manipulates events or circumstances in ways that correspond to our need. So there's a couple of examples of this in the Bible. First, Ruth had done what Naomi told her to do, right? She said, you go do this, you deal with Boaz this way. But, she comes back home And neither of them really knew if Boaz would follow through on what they hoped he would follow through on. So then they can't control someone else's actions. They just did their part, right? So we read in Ruth 3:18, then she said, "Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day." Sometimes you just have to do what God tells you and sit back and wait. And let him work. Let him work on other people's hearts. Let him work out the situation his way. Be patient. You may want to know right now. You may want it fixed right now, but just sit back and wait after you do what he tells you to do, and then sit back and wait. And then in the story of Moses, when he was a baby, his parents were trying to protect his life, right, as a little one, but they couldn't keep him anymore. It was becoming too risky, so they got the idea of putting him in the basket and putting him in the river. So what happened after that? Said, and his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. They couldn't control that situation either. They had to step back and wait and see God work, and God came through and worked out that situation as well. You know, you can't always control what's going on around you. Just be responsible and do whatever God's told you to do, and sit back and wait if you have to. Let him step in and intervene with other people doing their thing. He can guide other people to, I mean, what happened at the river with Moses? Pharaoh's own daughter came out, and who of all people picked up and protected Moses? I mean, what better answer could you get than that to protect Moses? It's the royal family protecting him. And I love this story that I read. There was a guy named Barnabas Shaw. He was a missionary in the late 1800s. He felt the call to go do missionary work at Cape Cod. Well, he gets all the way there, and when he got there, the town, people in power, whoever they may be, mayor of the town or whatever, told him he could not do evangelism there. So he traveled all that way and couldn't do the work that God had called him to do. Well, he didn't know what to do for sure, so he decided, he packed up and he went on an excursion into the interior of Africa for 27 days. He's at a certain point where he stops, and this tribe comes along. They're called the Hottentots. I've heard that name before, but I didn't know it was an African tribe. The Hottentots stopped by. They were on their way to Cape Cod, so they're like this. They travel, they meet 27 days into the interior of Africa. And the Hottentots, he somehow was able to communicate with them, and he found out that they were on their way to Cape Cod to find someone who could teach them about the great word that they had heard about. So God manipulated that whole situation. He thought he was going to Cape Cod, but no, that wasn't exactly it. He had a whole tribe he was now going to work with out in the woods out there. I mean, isn't that amazing? God will get you to where you need to go if you listen and follow him and just do what he says. And he'll bless your work and take care of you. And I think that was such a cool story. So number 5, very often an inner conviction will begin to develop. We develop an inward peace or a particular impulse about a given course of action. So you need to pay attention to red flags that pop up in your spirit. There's a reason that's popping up. Maybe you've got to slow down. Maybe you got to stop and analyze some things. Maybe that's not the direction you're supposed to go. Or maybe you're consumed with peace. Peace overtakes your spirit. That's a good sign that maybe that's how God's leading you. You shouldn't be doing anything out of confusion. That's what 1 Corinthians 14:33 says. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. So that's always my number one advice to people. If you're really confused about something, don't make a move. Do not make a move. You may think it's a good thing, maybe it's a good ministry opportunity, maybe it's a good job opportunity. Don't do it if you're feeling confused about the situation. Wait on God. Wait for that peace or redirection. Maybe he's redirecting. If you're not at peace, there's something wrong. And you've got to figure out why you're not at peace. And then for me, God talks to all of us differently. You have to learn how he speaks to you. And one of the things I learned about me as time has gone by is that when he wants me to do something, I get a real sense of urgency, like it's now. You do it now. It's a real strong sensation in me. And that's how I know many times it's time to act, time to do it. It does not leave my thought process, doesn't leave my heart. I just know it's now. And that may not be the way he would speak to you. See, everybody's got a different way, and that's what you have to learn. But I say the number one rule for almost everybody is peace. You should be at peace when he's telling you to do something. Don't do it in confusion or just upsetness. That's not the way to make the move when you're following God. Number 6, contemplate the issue. Think it through. Don't make a rush, sudden decision. Don't give in to that salesman because he tells you now is the moment. That is one of their favorite tactics. You got to do it now. They pressure you to get it done. And he's given us a brain. He expects us to use it. So he wants you to think about things, contemplate it. Maybe write a list of pros and cons. That may not be the answer, and you can't depend on that as your whole way to get an answer, but maybe that's how he's going to use, what he's going to use to help you think something through and to give you the answer you're supposed to have. So don't forget, you're not the scarecrow, you have a brain. Right? Well, I speak for myself. So anyway, the pros and cons can help you narrow down things and maybe point you in a direction, but don't just totally depend on that, but just think things through and ask God to guide your thoughts. The heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. So in other words, study. Think about things, okay? Number 7, find contentment in the way God leads. In other words, if things don't work out as you'd hoped, you just have to trust him. Be content with whatever the answer is. And we've did a few lessons on that a little while ago, right? Being content. That was at the beginning of the study. Because he knows best and he loves you, right? He's not going to be leading you astray or not giving you something that you shouldn't have. He's doing the best for you. So be content if he doesn't lead you a certain way or give you what you need, okay? Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. And we talked about that a few weeks ago. You know, he's given you what you're supposed to have. So the last few words of Psalm 23:3 are important. Why does he lead us on those paths of righteousness? For his name's sake. So living a godly life and being on that right path that he puts you on is not just so we have a better life, it's to glorify him. Everything we do is to glorify God. Others will glorify God when they see you living that godly life and being on the right path. They'll praise him for when they see how great a job God is doing leading you, right? If you're just all over the place and your life is not going right, what does that do for God's name? Not much. You're not bringing God glory by being all over the map. You need to be living the right life, a holy life, and be on the path he wants you in life, following him so that you can testify to others. You're giving other people a testimony about how much God is doing for you. And they're learning from you in the way you're living your life. So there are lots of names in the Bible. Max Lucado had kind of brought this subject up in his book because for his name's sake. There's lots of things that we can learn out of the Bible about God's character because we're carrying his name with us. That's basically what that verse, or the 10 Commandments, don't take the Lord's name in vain. It's not just about cussing. It's about the life you're living. You're carrying his name on you. You are a witness to people around you. So it's good for us to learn the names of God because you're representing him. And this is what Max Lucado is bringing up because you're doing everything you do for his name's sake, right, as this verse says. So I gave you a few right off the bat. Jehovah Ra, our caring shepherd. That's one thing we know about God. So if God is caring and he's a good shepherd, how should we be? You're carrying his name and you're supposed to act that way as well. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides. So we should be good providers for our family. We shouldn't be neglectful. So, because just like God cares for us, we should care for our family. Jehovah Shalom, the Lord of peace. So he's the God of peace. We're carrying his name with us. We should be at peace. We should be peaceful with others. Jehovah Raphi, the Lord who heals you. Now he heals us physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. But did you know you can help heal others too? By your attitudes, the way you treat them, forgiving them when they need forgiveness. That heals people. You're carrying his name. You're representing him in the world. So now I want you to take the rest of the ones home, right? And look them up and see if you can figure out what his name is. Okay? I'll try to remember to give you the answers next week, or make you give me the answers, whatever way it works out. But look them up so you can get, that's just some of his names. So you can even look up more if you go on the internet or have a book about that. So when we follow his leadership, he demonstrates his character and his nature to us, right? And to those who are watching us. When we're following him, he's teaching others about him through us. That's why it's important. It's for his name gets glorified. So following his leadership and staying on his paths of righteousness is critical to us having the best life possible and glorifying his name. So next week, we'll enter the valley of the shadow of death. Scary music, because we're entering the valley of the shadow of death. I'm trying to set the mood for you. Yeah, no longer peace next week because we're entering the valley of the shadow of death.